Hey, welcome back. Today, we're going to get into how to stay connected to the progress we're making. I'm Keith.
I'm Rodney, and I was waiting for it. This is the Daily Chronicle, where Keith and I we're outlaying our journey, like our current work journey, how we're efficient through that, our entrepreneur journey, and then we're laying it out for our daughters very specifically. That's why we're recording it, and then we were like, hey, let's put it on the interwebs and build a community around it, and around our podcast and our consulting business and the other things that we do to get you smart people involved and teaching us, frankly, as you do every day. So we're going to talk about staying connected to a thing. And Keith, I think you had an idea, so I'm going to ask you go first.
This is something I've been thinking a lot about in the last, I'd probably say 2 or 3 days. There is this thing that happens historically where we all get connected to the moment, when slavery ended, when Jim Crow ended, when some of the murders, Ferguson happened. Now George Floyd has happened. Let's talk about COVID. When COVID happened, yet we then become either fatigued or cognitively shifted, where we can then become more relaxed in it, whatever that cognitive shift is for an individual, right? And where we're at right now with George Floyd, in particular, this moment that has been sparked, how do we as individuals stay connected without being fatigued so progress can continue and we can all incrementally manage our behaviors so progress continues going forward?
Love you. Bye. I love you guys too. This is a good topic. I didn't know where you were going to go with this. This is a good topic because I struggle with this. Being a Black man who's dealt with these emotions for all of my cognizant life. Cognizant? Yeah, that's the word.
Conscious.
Conscious, but like,
yeah.
I think that's the more commonly used approach there.
Yeah.
So for me right now, like I'm feeling a lot of like just fatigue over time, like not just this incident, because this particular string of murders and COVID has opened a window that I think has, at least on the surface, given us more progress than the last 20, 30, 40 years, if I'm going to be overly optimistic. And I want to jump all over that. And then there's a piece of me that's like, yo, like, Keith, take this baton. Like, I'm glad that you're running with it. All my other white brethren and sisters and everybody else, run with it. But then at the same time, I've literally built a platform around dropping stuff off my desk, around having conversations about racial inequality and mental health and all of this that's happening. And it's like, oh, well, I guess this is that moment to show up, like to keep showing up. So I oscillate in days on this. And I think part of it is, for me, it comes down to integrity, like integrity with self, knowing who I am and knowing that that's driving, that I do want to show up, even in the moments where I don't want to show up. And I can give an example in a minute if we have time, but I would be curious to hear your retort.
I think there's so the fatigue that you experience as a Black man because of lived experience, I think white people in general feel it faster because we can, right?
Like, which is I'm not gonna lie, fresh. I'm like, really?
Yeah,
like, it's been like 2 weeks.
But that's the point, right? Like, if we take a rewind in 63, the Emancipation Proclamation, and I think 65 it was enacted. In 1870, the last slaves were informed, Juneteenth, right? Friday. After that, Jim Crow ended, or Jim Crow began, right? So there's this groundswell of positive feeling and sentiment, but then the reality of life kicks in. Jim Crow lasts for 100 years, give or take, right? And then we have the civil rights movement. A lot of people are comparing this moment to the civil rights movement. Well, then we have criminal justice reform. We have stop and frisk. Regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, and I understand you can take the claim that Black unemployment is as low as it ever had been, though it's not recovering as fast, and it's actually going up versus versus the white unemployment now that we're kind of recovering in COVID. Relationships with the Black community with Trump are not super strong, right? This is 2020. So what point do we get fatigue? We lost your video, homie. At what point do we get fatigue and start normalizing into what we know historically to be reality in this country? Things get better, but it's like huge spike, and then we're not going as far back, but we're going back a little bit, right? And so in 30 years, when our kids are older and we all want them to be the future and we teach them and we talk, there's going to be a larger population. But will that smaller population uprise because it is the ground and bedrock of our country to have oppression, especially towards Black people in some capacity? It's not so. The way I look at this, and I am taking this incredibly personally, and I'm talking about it in every platform, which is part of the reason why I brought it up today. Conversation, discussion, open, honest understanding of other people's perspectives, and having some extra compassion in those discussions is something we can do each and every day, and try not to get fatigued by it, and engage.
Can I
open it up?
Can I give an example real quick?
Yeah.
And I haven't actually sent this yet, but I've typed 75% of it. So like 2 weeks, week and a half ago, Drew Brees had a statement about that he was asked by a reporter. He was doing a virtual interview about the Kaepernick kneeling thing, or like if we see kneeling this season, if there's a season, whatever's going on with that, like how does he feel about it? And he gave his answer, and like I was deeply hurt for lots of reasons. Like, I mean, my senior season at Purdue was his, or my freshman year was his senior season. Like, I love this dude, like as a football player, and I look up to him, and like it just deeply hurt for a lot of reasons that I'm writing about. But my initial response to him was like, "How dare you? Like, you talk about your grandfather's fighting my grandfather's fought. Like, why does that? Why does that make your perspective more important than mine?" And I was pissed. Like, I was gonna go in on him, and then I was like, I took a breath, and I was like, you know what? If I just explain to him why it hurt and why I think he didn't actually answer the question that was asked, and what that does to people, I bet that this guy who I've looked up to a long time is intelligent enough to see that and maybe take a pause and think about it, versus if I just attack him and tell him he's this and he's that, and like where he'll never be able to access it, or maybe, I mean, it takes a rare person to be punched and be like, yeah, you know what, you're right. Like, shake hands. So yeah, that's kind of what keeps me engaged. It's like back to that integrity about who I am.
Listen,
Right, Reese?
And what I will say is, like, just on go forward, engaging honestly with people, even when it's uncomfortable, is a habit. And we in this country especially have been taught not to do that. We don't talk about religion and politics. We don't do this. We don't do that. When we've talked about this in the podcast, breaking bread is one of the best ways to engage and have discussion. Now, is it possible 100% of the time? No. Is the right circumstance open to it? No. But if we take an opportunity to compassionately engage and have conversation, we can keep the momentum going, continue to break cracks in that social fabric that says this is the bedrock of society, so we can continue to get better tomorrow, get better in the future, and we don't have to wait for the next George Floyd incident to find it again.
What he said. How are you thinking? How are you feeling? Are you overwhelmed? Are you exhausted? Are you staying connected? Are you driving towards making incremental changes in your personal life and the life of your family? How's it going? I mean, it can be tough talking to older generations, or your generation, or yourself. That's the hardest conversation. Talk to us about it. We're here. We're here for it.
All right. Thank you.